Today we have Marty Rienlein with us, which I'm really excited to have him on because if you just take a second and look into either his website or his LinkedIn or his background, this guy's done literally everything in the world you can do in the startup world. He's started companies, exited companies. He's invested in companies. He's been LP in funds. He's raised. He's designed. He's kind of done everything. And the thing with startups is that there's one ingredient that you absolutely have to be able to nail if you have all that success, which is figuring out growth. So on this podcast, we're going to talk about all things GTM with Marty. Marty, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey man, thanks for having me. No, I'm exhausted after hearing that intro. It's been a long 20 plus years, but it's exciting.
Yeah, totally. I think where I want to start is, you've done a lot, lots of logos, lots of portfolio companies, lots of companies. So I think I'll start with is there a phase in your career where you feel like you cut your teeth the most when learning how to grow a product or grow something, whether it's that your first company that was acquired by Twitter, or maybe what you're doing now at a degree, when did you cut your teeth in your career, but you feel like you kind of got a grasp on, I kind of know how this stuff goes, and you're able to kind of replicate it?
Yeah, so I don't think I'll ever really have the answer to that question, because I think the thing that frustrates people most when they pull me aside to a one-on-one and they're like, hey, you've done some interesting stuff over the last 20 years. Can I pick your brain? Can I get some advice? And the hard thing is that it's not about my outcome. Hey, I had an exit and you want an exit, or I worked at company X and you want to work at company X. It's the time in which I did it, and then the world was different then, and the world's always going to be different. So right now everyone's like, hey, it's all about AI and how does AI change things, but in the grand scheme of things, nothing's changed. We had this same conversation when the internet was just coming out in the early to mid 90s, right? It's the internet's a thing, it's going to change everything. And then with the iPhone, and mobile's going to change everything. And then with the App Store, and then social media, so we've always been having some iteration of this conversation, so that's a constant. But the way in which I think you go to market, or you position yourself to be unique or to stand out, that's ever evolving. And I think there's probably some core foundational things which you and I might end up getting into. But for me, if I go all the way back to the first time that my eyes were just whoa, that blew my mind. I'm undergrad, so this is in the late 90s, because I'm old now. Because you can't have that LinkedIn without a bunch of gray hairs. I was in a design class, and I'll skip the whole lead up to the story just for brevity, but there's this competition, and it's the best designers on campus, and one of us, I think there's 40 in this class, one of us is going to have our logo used by Nike. So this is a big deal, right? This will be game-changing for any one of us, because the first time we'll have one of these big logos in our portfolio, and this thing's going to be printed on Nike swag. So obviously you know where the story's going to go. I won, but I am objectively not the best designer in that cohort, not by far. Maybe top 10 if I'm lucky. But these two women who are awesome, I've been admiring them the entire class, looking up to them. You feel like you're 10 steps behind every time they walk in the door and they show their work. One of them, at the end of this, when they announced the winner, walks up to me, and she looks mad, she's just full force coming at me, and I'm just ready to be reamed out, or I don't know what's going to happen. But she just looks me dead in the eyes and she says, Marty, you know what? I don't think your design was better. I think you articulated it better. And I just oh my gosh, my entire next 20 years of my career comes flashing. You say you see your life flash before your eyes. I actually saw the inverse. I saw the flash forward. It was everything is sales. I realized that wow, I wasn't a better designer to her. No argument there. But I was a better salesperson. And I at that moment in my 21, I didn't make that connection. So it's years later that I realized, oh, she was talking about sales. But I was a better storyteller, I was a better narrator. I understood how to connect my work with their objectives. And then I realized, and I won't spend the whole pod on this, but recruiting is sales, right? If you're building a company, pitching investors is sales, going to market is sales, getting your first user, your second user, your first paying customer. Those are all sales. Some of them literally sales, but others it is this. And so I think from the spirit of your question, That's where it all started, with that one woman's comment at that one moment where she needed to connect the dots for me. And then I just started doing that. Like I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I think it's dangerous if you are, because then you're in a room full of dummies. But I want to be the most creative and clever person in the room. And so kind of foreshadowing this conversation between the two of us, that'll always be my position when talking about go-to-market. How can I just out-clever, out-creative everybody else for no other reason than I want to stand out, right? I want to win the Nike deal.
Yeah, well, I feel like when I kind of came across you online on Twitter, you were and still are promoting, what you're doing now, which is agree.com. And I kind of want to dive deep into some of your thoughts around how you've kind of taken that to market and how you've done it in a pretty, in my opinion, effective and in some way like guerrilla marketing way. You're just kind of just like banging the drum every day, and you're doing it in public, and you're putting signs on trucks outside of conferences and stuff, and it's like it feels random, but it's obviously working really well. So let's talk about agree.com. First question, for those that don't know about what you're doing with agree.com, can you tell everyone what is agree.com? And before you started it, before you paid a cent in marketing, before you did anything with bringing it to market, how did you just think about, okay, I'm doing this company, maybe it's called agree.com, how do I want to take this to market? What was that conversation in your head?
Yeah, so Agree is, it's like the easiest way to describe it, it's like a Docusign, but better. And for everyone listening, the best part is it's totally free, but with integrated invoicing and payment. So it's e-signature, but at the end of the most important signatures, somebody has to usually pay somebody money, but the process to do so is completely disjointed. So you can go from signature to invoice to payment all in one. It's specifically designed for anybody that moves the majority of their revenue through a contract. So this is mostly sales teams. But anyone listening, if you've got an NDA, an LOI, it doesn't matter. A pulse and a signature, we always say, you're welcome to come to Agree. You'll love it. It's totally free. And then for marketing, I think it starts with that word, agree. It wasn't agree.com out of the gate. Obviously, I didn't have that. I have some nice fun domains like marty.com, but I did not own agree.com at the time. But we knew it had to be called something that was going to invoke trust, right? Because we're talking about digital acceptance, right? You're signing a legal document, and we're signing it because worst case scenario, we got to take this thing to court, right? So this is a big deal, right? And so you've got to be able to trust this thing. And then I'm also asking some of these users, hey, move your revenue through the platform. That's also a big deal. It's a big ask of people. So that you have to have trust. So we wanted a name and a word that made sense to the product value, that can invoke that trust. And so we were dead set on agree was the best word. Like, let's agree to agree. There were a lot of plays on it. And then eventually we found the owner of the domain. It wasn't being utilized in the way that we thought it should, and we kind of came to an agreement, and they agreed to sell it to us, and then we became Agree, and we became agree.com, which, again, I think helps with a very early stage company that's coming right out of the gate, because we do a lot on the payment side. So, we have to go up against Bill.com. We even have to go up against Stripe, which I think just as a startup founder feels like a terrifying statement to say out loud, because Stripe can do no wrong. They're awesome and they're wonderful at everything they do. But Docusign, right? 22-year-old incumbent. Their market cap's like $30 billion now. They're the market category definer, and it kind of become a verb. Like Matt, if you and I are going to do a deal at the end, I'm like, send me the Docusign, right? I have to fight that, and so the brand really matters, and so something we can take to market. And what's really fun right now, time will tell, but if you go to Docusign.com right now, the word they lead with is agree, and so we know that we've picked the right kind of noun-verb combo.
What was your thought on getting, well, not even your thought, what was your action? Did you get agree.com before you did any meaningful push on the company and the product and build? Or did you do a lot of things in stealth before you had the name? Like, what came first, really? And would you say that entrepreneurs should follow that same path, or does it depend on the company and what they're doing?
Yeah, I love your question, because I'm gonna not answer it, then I'm gonna answer it, because now you've made me realize that probably the number one piece of advice I want to give to any entrepreneur, especially first timer, the answer to these things, there's no binary. There's no you do one, then you do the other. You should be doing a multiple of things in step with each other. And so there isn't like, hey, go buy the domain, build the brand, and then go build the product, right? Like, right? I mean, I'm a builder, and that's what I do. So that's how I think. But I'm also a creative. So to get excited about building, I have to have a name and a logo. So that's my own process. That doesn't be your process. But I knew it was Agree. But honestly, in the beginning, I don't know. It's like let'sagree.io or something. It's horrible. We still have it. I got to go look it up. But it's embarrassingly bad. But it's 99 cents on GoDaddy, and it shouldn't be the thing that holds me up. I shouldn't be spending months trying to find the best domain. Like, just, it doesn't matter. Just get something up, because the odds are, probability, like most of us, our idea or a thing we're working on is going to go nowhere. So let's accelerate going nowhere. Let's not spend 2 years to go nowhere. So figure out the name, the brand. I need a logo. I need to start like making a marketing site, because it's the constraint that helps me. Like, think about your average marketing site, like big headliner, subtext, like 3 little value props, and like a CTA, call to action. What are those 3 value props, right? Like in Agree, I can only do, I have a long list of awesome features which make us like so cool. Like, we haven't even talked about like how we use AI, but like, I don't get to do all that. I get to say 3 things, right? I do signatures, invoicing, payments. I gotta narrow it down. That process helps me do that. Also, for anyone that wants to raise venture capital, I think start making a pitch deck earlier. Not that you're going to use it or send to anyone, but the constraint. You got to do it in 8 to 12 slides. You got to have your title slide, your team slide. You got to have your TAM slide. Like, going through that mental exercise, I think helps you better understand what product you're going to build, and then go build. We all know about the MVP, but go build the simplest thing, the simplest version of this, right? So for me, no payments, no invoicing right out of the gate. You just got to do signature, because in my process, if you're going to sign, send, and get paid, you can't do any of that unless you sign first. So order of operations, why would I spend all this time on the payment side if I never end up building the signature side? So signature first, order of operations. So build a small prototype, build something you can use, a small cohort of your own network can use. If you're first, I don't want to talk ever about first user, first 10 users. I mean, those better be like mom, dad, your friends, right? Like if they're not going to use it, no one else is going to use this thing. So go build for them. Obviously, that doesn't work for everything you build in all contexts. If we're talking like aerospace or space tech, but for most of us, 98% of us, those should be your first 10. That's your prototype. What can those first 10 use? Then you're really talking, and I think Matt, you and I will talk more about this, but going from 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 10,000, and then to the moon.
Yeah, well, that was actually going to be my next question, which is, this may be the wrong order. You can correct me if you can. But at some point you raised, I believe, a pre-seed round of
Yep.
I think $3 million. You can check me on that if that's wrong. Cool. I got the thumbs up for those listening in the car. But when you raise your pre-seed round, I mean, as you know, like, you're also an investor, you're also an LP. It's kind of like the starting bell for like a race, the race of like, getting in the market and growing very quickly and getting to an exit in like 7 to 12 years. Different opinions, but generally that range. What did you do after you raised? The money's wired, it's in your account. Like, now what? How do you allocate it? How do you know what channels to go for? What's going through your brain at that point?
Yeah, another great question, because I just think there's so many like embedded like entrepreneurial like advice moments in these questions. Again, not binary. For me, as an investor, I don't want to invest in you if the only reason you're going to do this or bring this to fruition is because you raised the capital. Like you're doing this no matter what, and nothing will stop you. And I want to invest in that person. So Will and I, my co-founder, we have this mantra that we say quite often to ourselves: go forward as though you're right, prepare as though you're wrong. Right? So I'm going to go forward as though I'm going to close that round, and I've got all the preparations. I got the team in place, the people I'm going to hire. I've got all the features I'm going to build. But if every investor looks at us and says, hey, you're batshit crazy. Now, I want to listen to people. So if they have if I'm hearing patterns, it's like, hey, maybe this actually is a really terrible idea, I shouldn't go forward with this, then yeah, pivot away or pivot to something new. But if I couldn't raise for a number of other reasons. One, let's just say I'm a first-time founder, I have no experience, I have no revenue, I have no product. You get a lot of no's going for you. Go get those yeses, right? Go find the easiest path of least resistance to yeses. Go get them and then fundraise again. But don't stop. And I only want to invest in founders. I only want to be a founder that won't stop. And then I think the other really important part of your question is there's only one thing that really matters, and that's speed of execution. So I actually, and again, I like the phrasing of your question, but it's not how I look at it. It's not the money came in and like you're off to the races. I was always off to the races. It just, my momentum either accelerates or decelerates. And so when an investor asks me, and I actually hate this question because it feels a little amateur, but like, what do you need the funds for? I only ever need the funds for one thing: move faster, right? Now, so I think in the spirit of their question, what they're really asking is, in which areas are you going to move faster? Are you going to hire a bunch of salespeople, hire a bunch of engineers? So I just don't like that it's so vague. Like, what are you going to use it for? Like let's get really tactical here. One other piece of advice I'll give, because we're going through the fundraising process now. Oftentimes an investor will ask you a question. I actually don't think they care about the answer to the question, because there is no right answer. They just want to know that you have an answer. So often they're looking for like deer in the headlights. Like, why do you need $3 million? And if you're just like, I don't know, then why would I give you $3 million, right? So like, have an answer, be quick, have conviction, I think, with everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. And for you, for the tactics that you're willing or able to share, like, of the capital that you allocated to grow Agree, like, what are some channels that you tried? Is it one of these things where you just run a bunch of experiments? Is there a certain sales force that you're hiring? Are you kind of holding a lot of that money until it's proven out more? Just like walk us through how you think about actually getting to, is your goal 20,000 right now? Then it's like 100,000. Like, you keep having these milestones online. So like, how are you allocating the capital to like continue to push the button and make the execution happen?
Yeah. So great question. I look at it like, again, never binary, and I also think you want some kind of like North Star, some really big, they always say like hairy, audacious goal, but like something that's gonna be really hard to achieve. If you're in the fundraising game, these kind of metrics are already there. You need some kind of vanity metric that people are getting around. You need a metric, first of all. But if you're post revenue, so a really big seed, early stage A, these days it's minimum 3 million ARR. You got to have 3 million of revenue coming in through the platform. Old days it was 1 million, but like inflation. Right before revenue, you need some optics number. If you're doing a consumer play, like first 1 million users, right? If you're doing more B2B SaaS, like I can get away with a smaller number. 10,000 is the number I anchor on now, but it's 10,000 over a very short period of time, because no one actually, like the 10,000 users in 4 months, people like light up. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Didn't know that many people cared about e-signature. Candidly, I didn't know either. We hit that number way sooner than I thought we would. But what really matters to them is in that September 14th to August 14th to December 14th, because Matt, we're actually going to hit the 10,000 number like on this call. We're at like 1,998. So I'll hit refresh right before we get off, because maybe we'll just celebrate. So it's happening real time. But that's 200 average 200% month over month growth, because we started in the private beta with like 250 users. Like, that's the number they care about, because it's like, oh, okay, 200% month. Now that's not going to be sustainable forever, but like, hey, we've got a repeatable pattern here, because we're doing that almost consistently. And now there's some months where Matt, you were like, hey, Marty, you got to launch this thing on Product Hunt. And I was thinking like, oh, I love Product Hunt. Like, will that be a great audience for me? Will that make sense? I was like, yeah, it's free to post on Product Hunt. Why would I not? Like, great idea. And but in that like 3-day period when we got Product Hunt of the Day, which is awesome, but in that 3-day period, we got 1,000 users in those 3 days. Before that, it was like a week and a half. I was getting about 1,000 users. Now, I was celebrating that. I was like, that's astronomical. But then, like the week after, obviously it's going to slow down, but we did end up getting Product of the Week, which was awesome. But like, it was like a week, and then we got like, I think it was like 6 days exactly, we got another 1,000 users. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. And I look at it as like market validation. Hey, like that user base is really interesting. They care about new and emerging products, but the fact that they care about e-signature, like, because I'm going up against like really cool AI tools, like AI for like digital streaming and influencers. I'm like, how am I going to beat these people? Friend.com went on Product Hunt that same week. I'm like, I can't beat, like, they paid $1.8 million for that domain name. That's way cooler than Agree.com. But that was refreshing and nice to see.
Well, I thought I think with Product Hunt, effort matters a lot, and I feel like you put up together like a nice plan with your team, and like you were like hyping it up all day, and that matters, honestly. Like, I think the more you care and the more you get your community and team involved, the more people will see that and kind of like want you to win and root for you for that day and then week, which is cool.
Well, it reminds me too. I mean, it's part of your earlier question, but I by no even 20 years plus in, by no means think that I know everything. I don't know how to quote unquote win product time. So I just went on, looked at anyone who won product of the day, and that were kind of in the same category as me, like B2B SaaS. Because my instinct is that it'd be harder to win against some of these really cool like consumer plays, which like everyone can be a user of. And I just found the founder and I pinged them. It's like, hey, do you have any like tips or tricks? And there's a lot of people that do that because now I get pinged. It's like, hey, saw you won product of the day. Do you have any tips or tricks for me? And then same, I think you asked about like marketing. You know, I like the sales sides of things, but I'm not a natural like academically trained marketer. And so like, I don't know how to master LinkedIn or Google ads, but I understand the fundamental basics. But when we're ready and we've done a few tests on our own and we kind of know directionally where we're headed, I bring in someone that knows their stuff. And so there's this woman who's like awesome. She's a fractional CMO, but I've known her for years on Twitter, and she's worked at some places that like I put at like really high pedestals, like public.com. But her name's Katy Perry, and like she just knows her stuff, and like she's just an awesome person to work with. As soon as we were building this, I took a leap. I was like, hey, Katy, like we've actually never even met in real life, but we've tweeted back and forth. So I cold DM her. Like, any chance you want to partner up on this? Any chance you want to help us out? And she's like, Marty, I freaking love it. I'm in. Mm-hmm. And then like she's a big help. Like she's gotten our Google cost of customer acquisition down to like $3, which is awesome. And so it attributes for about a third of that 10,000 users these days.
That's wild, and that brings up a question I wasn't planning on asking, but I think is an interesting one that I'm curious about, which is, I feel like a lot of founders, including myself, like think that as we grow, we have to just learn new things and figure out new skills to get to the next level and stage. But what I'm hearing from you is that, like, when you realize that you needed to get to that next growth level, instead of you learning like a whole new trade, something that wasn't maybe not something super natural to you, you found the person who's an expert at that and just like brought them in and said, hey, like, you do the thing that you're great at, so I can keep doing the thing that I'm great at. Like, what is that a natural, like, was that easy to recognize when it's time to bring someone in, when it's still all very early, or how'd you know the time to bring someone like Katy in?
Yeah, and at first, I do want to kind of like do it yourself. Don't pay someone to run a Google ad, or you can do it in Google. Like sign up for Google Workspace, you're going to get like $500 to $1,500 in credits. Or use up the credits, or get all these credits, use them up, learn. So like even just doing it out of the gate, like I optimize on a few keywords because I followed the competition. I use them as a comp. So like what are they doing? What keywords are they running against? And I think we were doing like, it was horrible. But it was like $6.50 a customer acquisition, and like we ran that by Katy, and she's like, oh, that's ridiculous. We can get that down. I don't even think she knew she'd get it down to like $3 and change. So that's been awesome to do. I think same thing with like building your marketing page. Like go to Wix, go to Framer, like get a template, get one that looks good. Don't over index, and then hire your first designer, and then get like a custom landing page. I think even with your prototype, you can outsource it. You can bring in some engineering teams, but I think as you're going to build your actual scalable product, and you want to minimize tech debt over time, like have a core engineering team. But with people like Katy, I always tell my co-founder Will this more because she's one of the best at what she does, based here in New York. So you can presume that she's not going to be like the cheapest option in town. But it's like, hey, again, I want to think about we're going to learn from her. We're going to get like a marketing MBA in a box. I'm not going to just put her out there and just say, go, and she comes back with results. I want to know, like, what tools is she using? How is she using them? Like, when we get on our weeklies with her and she runs us through kind of the metrics and the numbers, like, I really want to walk through strategically, like, why are we using HubSpot over any other platform? Why are we using Intercom over any other platform? How is she doing these re-engagement campaigns? When she's doing like SEO and she's thinking through like, blog content, how is she generating that? Like, what AI tools are she using? Because like she's obviously not writing 500 word blog posts every single week, so she's using some AI tools. Like, okay, how are you doing that? What prompts are you putting in? And so I'm gonna walk away. I'll never be Katy Perry, but I'm gonna be like, hey, I've got a degree in the Katy Perry Marketing University after spending a year with her, and that to me will have value. And I bake that into the cost.
I love that. That's a great answer. So changing gears slightly, so away from Agree is, you've done several companies, I think 5. Most of them, if not all of them, exited and were acquired. And you, like I mentioned in the beginning, like you invest in tons of companies. Tell me, are you able to when you invest in a company, you may have ideas on things they can do differently, potentially, based on your experience as a successful operator and founder. But as an investor, it's not your job to like do things. It's your job to just support the founders. Even if you may know things could be different if they did X, Y, or Z differently. Like, how do you think about that as an investor? And are you hands-on in helping them with founder things, or are you hands-off, or what's your kind of ethos on that?
Yeah, so as an investor, I've made the investment, I made the decision, I've wired the money. I only really want to invest in founders that don't need me to do the really basic stuff, don't need my guidance there. Now, if they do need it and they ask me for it, I'm there 100%, right? Because I'm here to support you. But again, I want to believe that they're making some kind of decision for some kind of reason that I don't see or I'm not aware of yet, and I'm gonna learn, or we're both gonna learn, right? They say you either you win or you learn, you don't lose, and so okay, well, it turns out they made the wrong decision, and we do have folks in the portfolio that had to shut down. We have other folks that have gone on already in the short period that we invested in them return almost the entire fund. It's like that like Beehive and basically here in New York has just gone explosive, like wild. And there's other ones that unfortunately aren't around anymore. And our take is, though, especially in the early stage, you gotta give the founder room to sort of breathe, grow, learn, explore, experiment. And so we take the position of like, don't slow them down. I think the way you slow them down is you get them on Zooms and you respond lengthy emails. You're just there to be support. You read their investor updates. You look at the asks, and like if you can truly contribute to one of those asks, and jump in quickly. Like, do not be the bottleneck. Doesn't matter if you're on vacation or what. Like jump in right away. So I look for those things. And then with folks that I haven't invested in yet, because we mostly all do early stage, we get a lot of first-time founders. And so I have to find out quickly, because I want to be respectful, are they looking for validation or advice? I feel like that's the two camps. If you're looking for validation, I'm already not your guy. But if you're truly looking for advice, then I will articulate where I think you might be going down, or you could go down a better path. And I'll walk through sort of the steps and order of operations and things I've seen in my past. And then if I don't want someone who completely like pivots their entire roadmap because of something I said. Like, that's kind of a red flag for like, I don't want to invest in them. But I do like founders where you can tell they're coming at it for advice, not just looking pure for validation.
Cool. One more question for you before we get into our rapid fire. In the history of me doing podcasts, I've done a ton. I don't think I've ever done a rapid fire series, so that'll be fun. But before then, is there anything else from your journey in the last 2 decades, whether it's agree or companies you sold to Twitter or Eventbrite, that you think would be interesting for founders or early stage growth people to hear, coming from someone that's been in the arena for 2+ decades?
Yeah, so 2 things I'll give on this one, so we can get to the rapid fire. First is constantly build your network. I think that's probably the most valuable asset we have. And you hear this a lot, but like I got 20 years in, what I really mean by this is if I go back 20 years ago, some of the most valuable people to me, and I don't build relationships because I'm looking to extract value, but it's kind of the context of what we're talking about right here, growing our businesses. Some of those people, they started out as the people that like right now you're thinking, oh, I want to build my network with Mark Andreessen at A16Z. Me too. But like the person who you're discounting because you think that they're not as important, like just give it time. Like in 20 years, that person is now the VP of design at Uber or at Twilio, and they're going to get you in when you're trying to sell a SaaS contract to like your big enterprise customer. That person is now the general partner at a fund that does $500 million in AUM, and you're going to go pitch them. Like a lot changes in 22 years. I had an intern that eventually went on to start a startup that got acquired by Twilio for $3 billion. It was the intern. Like just luckily, like I'm a really good intern boss. But imagine I like treated him like garbage and made him get my coffee. It was just like a horrible he's like, oh, you're just the freaking intern. Like no. And now me and that dude really good friends. And he like invested in our fund, which was awesome. Like and he supports us everything we do and makes introductions whenever he can. So like I think that's one really important step. And then the other thing, and even with your competitors. Like I remember early on, we took a meeting with Kevin Hartz at Eventbrite when we were building at the time what I would call publicly an Eventbrite killer. It's like kind of a bold thing to say, first of all, but then for Kevin to invite us into San Francisco to his office. But that relationship obviously over time turned into an acquisition. And so take all the meetings you can. I don't like this, like a lot of people will tell founders, be cautious of your time, don't take investor meetings. No, take them all day long, because don't take them when you need them. Like, take them, build the relationship, and then when you do need them, you're just following up on a relationship that you've already made. I think that's easier. And then the last thing I'll say on this, just with respect to sort of how we think about agree. Actually, I've already lost my train of thought, so I don't remember the last thing, but those first two were pretty good.
Oh, they're very good. I mean, that's everything. Your point on like your peer today could be, the leader of a certain company or the leader of a fund in 10, 20 years is so important. I've seen it. I'm about 10 years into my tech career, and it's true. I mean, I quick 20-second story, then we'll do rapid fire and we'll call it a day, is when I was backed, my last company, Publock, we were backed by Jason Calacanis. We were up in Silicon Valley for his accelerator, and I was Twitter DMing with this guy, Alex, who had this fun contractor, payment company called Deal, and they just raised their like $2 million pre-seed. And like we're in his apartment, we're hanging out, like just in his apartment, and he's just like, "Oh, we just pivoted, like I don't know, like and I'm like, "Oh yeah, like XYZ," and what is it? Is it 5 years later? They're now, I mean, I don't know how big they are. I think like $5, $7, $8 billion company. And of course, I got him on the podcast, which is great. But it's like, you never know, right? You never know who's going to be the.
I have a portfolio company that got acquired by Deal. And so now I'm on the Deal cap table, which is awesome. It's just it's such a small integrated world. You learn that really quick. Oh, I remember the last thing I was going to say.
Yeah.
You asked for advice for founders marketing GTM. One thing that I've learned with Agree that again, in hindsight, it just seems so obvious, but it wasn't to me until I faced it head on. There's some brands, if you have the luxury of going against a brand that people kind of hate, because I think as entrepreneurs, we're all going up this uphill battle, and then we all have this boulder to push. And some of us are boulders bigger, heavier than others. Your boulder gets much smaller and less heavy if you go up against what I call a villain brand. And there's some where I just say the name and you're immediately going to get a visceral reaction, right? Jira, you're going to say, Microsoft Teams, Ticketmaster, right? The IRS, the DMV. One of those just happens to be Docusign. And people are just like, oh, and I kind of looked into it because, like, I don't know, I like to poke fun at them, but it's not that bad. It does the job. You send it, they sign it. Like no one's ever like had a failed Docusign. So so why are they in this group of filler? And it turns out, and then we use this to our advantage, that the reason people don't like them is they don't think there's a value there. They don't think to sign something electronically, I should be paying you thousands of dollars a year because I know that I can just do it with pen, paper, and a stamp. Again, it takes longer, but the convenience isn't worth it. So we're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So we started leaning into that a lot. And I don't always advocate calling out another brand, but when you're young and you're hungry, and it opens the door to more sales because they don't care what I say. If I just go to you in a sales call and I just say, hey, do you hate Jira? Like they're just like, let's talk more. It's like, okay, so I'm selling banana bread, right? It's irrelevant because I hate Jira. But for me, like, yes, I am selling an alternative to Docusign, but there's not one door that doesn't open the second I say, like, is today the last day you pay for Docusign? Do you think Docusign's over, expensive? Do you want an alternative to Docusign? It's always yes, 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 yes.
Totally. I think that's super smart. Cool. Well, rapid fire time. This will be interesting. So the rules here is I'll say something, and it'll either be a question or you can pick one or two options, and like your answer has to be in under, call it 5 seconds. Under 10, up to 10 seconds, whatever, okay. Like pretty quick. Okay, here we go. X or Twitter?
Oh, Twitter, 100%. Because I'm old school, sold our company to Twitter. It'll always be Twitter to me. Always Twitter.
Okay, new Jaguar branding or old Jaguar branding?
Oh, I hate the new branding. I think the new branding was built for an era that never came. And so I think it was from a previous era, and they thought the world was going to change, and it didn't go that direction.
One tip.
But pre Ford acquisition, so like Jaguar pre 2002.
One tip you would give a founder who wants to launch on Product Hunt?
Oh, you know what I thought was really interesting I didn't know about? Your category matters, especially if you think about like product of the week, product of the month. You might not actually win the product of the month holistically, but you can win it for your category, like if you were B2B SaaS or fintech. And so category is really important. And I don't know if you want to game it this way, but you could potentially pick a really obscure category and almost guarantee you. And I don't know if gaming it that way works, but I didn't realize category. No one had mentioned that to me. That category was an important selection.
If you weren't working on Agree and you had to work on something else that was interesting to you, what space or what high-level thing would you be working on, or space would you be intrigued in?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little obnoxious because it's like, AI, but I think when the GPT-3 beta came out in 2020, it was AI plus what? And so we did AI on top of OCR unlocks what, and that's how we got to Agree. But there's a lot of spaces where nothing has changed in almost the last 2 decades, and one of the ones that we get most excited about is CAD. We still use CAD software, and CAD, that name still persists as a brand. And so I think generative AI on top of CAD is going to fundamentally change how we think about architecture, prop tech, and so I'm pretty excited about that space. And then, the last one I just have to say is like longevity. Like, we're just going to live longer. Someone threw this like Gattaca reference on Twitter, and they're like, dude, thinking about having a kid in the next 2 years, I think I need to wait, because I think the distance between when you can genetically ensure that they're going to be a little bit smarter, faster, live a little bit longer, get rid of some genetic things that might crop up later in life. Why would I want to have one kid now and another kid 2 years after that, and that kid's just going to be so much more superior? That's dystopianly creepy and weird, but we're heading that way.
Totally. And for the last rapid fire question, do you think you will implant a Neuralink in your brain in the next 25 years?
Yeah, because this is you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, that's because there's so many pessimists in technology and technological advancements. Just ask me in 1999 if I would put a supercomputer that tracks my every movement in my pocket, where I was so addicted to it, it had to be the first thing I opened at night, or in the morning, and last thing I opened at night. It'd be like, no, why would you ever do that? Right? It'd be such a Black Mirror thing. And I'm so hooked to this thing that I take it to the toilet with me, and so hooked no one wants to talk about it, but we actually pick it up and open it where you're sitting on the toilet, and you all know you do it, so don't judge. You would have answered no, and that would have been the most ridiculous thing. You would have said it was dystopian. No, and so am I putting the beta version in my brain? No way. And so and I like to think I'm an early adopter. I did not buy the first iPhone in 07. I waited for the second version in 08 with the App Store and 3G, and it was a much superior device. The first version, it's only arguably a better BlackBerry, but the second version, 3G, 100 times faster internet, App Store where you're getting Uber, Square, billion-dollar business built overnight, that was the game changer. So I think same thing with Neuralink, because I look at this in business. The question isn't, should your business do something, right? Or should Marty get my question is, what happens if my competitor does it? And I think this was true when generative AI came out. It's like, oh, should we have an AI strategy? I don't give a shit if you think you should have an AI strategy. I want to know, is your competitor going to have an AI strategy? What is it and how will that impact you? So I don't want, if I'm 17 right now, I don't want to be the only one going to undergrad and all my classmates got a Neuralink in their head and I don't. You're just going to be left behind.
I agree, and we'll end it there. Marty, thank
you agree
so much. Yeah, check out Agree. What's your website, Marty?
Agree.com. Hey, tell all your friends. Never pay for Docusign again.
Thank you so much for coming on to How I GTM, and I'm excited to watch Agree grow to the millions and billions in the next several years. Thanks for coming on.
10,000, baby, 10,000. This is exciting.
Let's go. Do you want to refresh real quick? Did you hit it yet?
Let's do it.
Let's see.
All right. Somebody go sign up real quick. I'm one away. We're one away.
Okay. Well, someone will sign up and you'll hit it. Maybe it'll happen in a few seconds. Maybe it'll be a podcast listener. Thanks for coming on.
Right.
And we'll keep chatting on the Twitters. Have a good rest of your day.
Right. Take care, man.
Bye.
Bye.